So this story occurred right here in Montreal, where I'm spending Labor Day weekend. As a matter of fact, I'm at the Montreal Eaton Center right now. As you can see, there's like extensive construction here. I don't know how long it's going to be under construction for, but they're doing like major renos. I'm sure it's going to look all nice once they've finished. So anyways, this story time took place right here in Montreal. Didn't take place this weekend. This actually occurred a few years back. So there's this buffet restaurant right here in the west end of Montreal called Buffet Vichy. That's Buffet Vichy, spelled V-I-C-H-Y. It's on, I think, Newman Boulevard, just down the street from the Angry No metro station on the Green Line. So anyways, you can probably tell by the name, Buffet Vichy, that it is an all-you-can-eat buffet restaurant. And basically what happened was I went there, and that particular night, I happened to be finishing up at the restaurant right around the time, like close to closing time. So my waitress, she brought me out, she brought me my bill, and she asked me how I'm going to be paying, if it's going to be cash or debit. So I was paying by debit, and she brought me out the debit machine. And on with their particular debit machine that they had at this time, if you wanted to tip them, you'd have to let them know how much you're tipping them so they can input that into the machine. So she asked me, how much I was tipping her, and I told her I wasn't tipping. I'll tell you towards the end of this video why I don't believe in tipping. But anyways, I told her I wasn't tipping. And then she just kind of paused, and then she kind of raised her voice. She didn't yell at me, but she raised her voice. You're not going to tip me? And I said, no. And she said, I've got bills to pay. And I said to her, yeah, I have bills to pay too. And I don't get tipped at work. And then she said a few other things. I can't remember all of them. And I said to her, you know what? I'm not obligated to tip anyone. I don't have to give. A tip is something that you only give if you feel like giving. You're not obligated to tip anyone. And she said, well, how come you're not tipping me? And I said to her, I don't have to give you a reason. That's completely my choice. And then she said, not nice. So I ended up not tipping her. She walked away in a huff and a puff. I went to complain to someone who, I think he was the man. He identified himself as a manager. He was either a manager or a supervisor for that particular shift. I'd seen him there many times before, so I went, and I've been to this restaurant many times before, and I went to complain to him about this girl's attitude, how, I'm under no obligation to tip and all that. And he was saying, why didn't you tip her? And I said, I don't have to have a reason for not tipping. It's just completely my choice. And he was just kind of laughing about the whole thing and not taking it seriously and pretty much siding with her. Well, there was another time shortly thereafter that I was actually at home in London, Ontario. So I was in a pissy mood that day. And I decided to call up, ask for the owner of the restaurant. Being that I was in a pissy mood, I was yelling and swearing at the owner of the restaurant. The owner of the restaurant apologized and said there's no excuse for that, You're not under any obligation to tip. And waiters and waitresses and bartenders should not be interrogating you because you choose not to tip. And the manager should have handled it more professionally, so he apologized and told me that he'd be talking to everyone involved. So now I calmed down a bit and I apologized for yelling and swearing at him, and he said, okay, no problem, no big deal. But anyways, the reason why I don't believe in tipping, like most other people, I work hard for my money, and like most other people, I want to spend as little money as possible, and I want my money to last me as long as possible. And I don't feel any obligation to tip. Like I know here in the Canadian province of Ontario, and I think right across Canada, in fact, like we've got various minimum wages that vary. We have a minimum wage that varies from province to province, as well as within our 3 territories. It's set by the territories as well too. So it's set by either the province or territory. And yes, I know that hospitality staff such as bartenders, waiters, and waitresses, their minimum wage is below the regular minimum wage because they take into account that they're going to be earning tips. So, well, I want my money to last me as long as possible. And while tipping is heavily recommended and encouraged, and even expected, there is no legal obligation in Canada to tip. That's right, there is no legal obligation in Canada to tip. You only tip if you want to. They can't go ahead and call the police on you because you didn't tip. The only way that they can take legal action against you is if you don't pay the principal amount of the bill. So in other words, you don't pay for the food and drinks as well as pay the taxes that are on top of that. That's all you have to pay. You do not have to tip. And I think I've only experienced this once before. Even if a restaurant does, here in Canada, even if a restaurant does add gratuity to your bill, I don't even know if under those circumstances, if you're legally obligated to pay it, or if you could object to paying that gratuity and refuse to pay that gratuity or not. But it's just that people in the hospitality industry need to give their head a shake and realize that tipping is a privilege. Tipping is not a right. Tipping should not be an expectation. Tipping's a privilege. And the thing is, I notice that the more time goes on, the more they expect you to tip them. Like I think being a little kid, I think the standard tip when I was a little kid was like 10%. And then a few years after that, it went up to 15%. Now, a lot of these people in the hospitality industry expect to be tipped like 20 or 25%. I just don't like being told that I have to tip because I know that it's not something that's legally obligated. That is my choice whether or not I tip. And even if I choose not to tip, that doesn't give you people in the hospitality industry the right to refuse service to people or the right to give them sloppy or slow service. If you're not satisfied with the amount of money that you're making at your particular job, there's a very simple thing you can do. Quit that job and go find yourself another job that pays you more. Or keep doing that job, but find yourself a second job so you can earn a little bit more money. Again, tipping is an obligation, not a right. And it's my understanding that across Canada, yes, tipping is something that is strongly recommended. And I know it's the same way in the States as well, too. But in many other countries around the world, it's my understanding that there's many countries where tipping is not expected, and in fact, tipping is even considered rude. So that's the way I feel about tipping. That waitress was completely in the wrong for the way she reacted. And I noticed across Canada, tipping is something that people in the hospitality industry want, but there seems to be a particular emphasis here in Quebec in the province of Quebec for some reason. I remember even going to a nightclub and seeing a sign up on the wall saying nice people tip. Like they severely frown upon you. Like that's the first time I've ever been called out by someone for not tipping. And I got into a dispute with it was a friendly it was a friendly, good-spirited debate that I got in with one of my coworkers because he thinks you should be tipping. You should definitely be tipping. And he was saying, that if you go to a restaurant or a bar and you don't tip them, then it's like they're just working for free. No, that's not the case. To this particular person, that's not the case. Even though their minimum wage is below the minimum wage for most other jobs, they still do have a minimum wage that they have to be paid. So here in Canada, you're not allowed to just work in the hospitality industry just for tips. There has to be an hourly wage paid. So no, to this person, you got it wrong. Just because you don't tip someone, a bartender, waiter, or waitress, doesn't mean that they're working for free. I might end up getting a lot of thumbs down this video, and that's perfectly fine. I might get a lot of people throwing things at the screen and all that will get pissed off at me. That's fine with me. You can feel free to disagree with me, but that's just the way I feel about tipping. I feel that tipping is something that should be everyone's choice, and nobody should feel obligated to tip, especially if they get lousy service. So yeah, this particular restaurant, Buffet Vichy, their food's actually pretty good. I haven't been there in a few years, but their food was actually pretty good. So would I go back there? Yeah, I would. Despite that poor experience, most of my other experiences there have been fine. I haven't had any problems other times that I went there. So yeah, I'll give Buffet Vichy a try again. And I don't know if that waitress still works there or not, but if I do end up getting that waitress, then guess what? Again, I will not tip her. Okay, thanks for watching.